Welcome to my Dream School students and guests. I have a very special interview with you. This is with a woman named Rochelle, and she is the Reddit user named So Many Lives. You'll see coming up here that she posted a experience that she had over the course of a few years where she had many dreams about an old friend and gained information from those dreams that she couldn't have known otherwise. It truly is amazing, and it really dovetails with what we've been learning about how dreams can provide direct representations in the form of dream characters, that they can provide objective information. So we're going to go ahead and drop right into the interview. I hit the record button and I was already talking with her, so it's a little bit of an abrupt transition, but you'll catch up quickly, and a little bit later you'll find out more about Rochelle and about her experiences. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the interview. Let me begin by telling you the point of this is that as I just told you before we started recording, I like to give my students things to really personalized subjects that we talk about at Dream School. And one of them I had just finished was about how you can get objective information through dreams. I teach that usually when you see like a character in a dream, what you're seeing is some kind of representation. It personifies aspects of yourself, or if it's someone that you know, what you're really dreaming is about like your thoughts or feelings about that person, or you're processing memories of recent events or circumstances with them. And then I had to give this information about this direct ways that we can see people in our dreams. It's almost like being, like beamed in with your video chatting with someone on your computer. You're seeing an image of the person on the other side. And it's not like, it's sort of a representation, but it's the person. It's not, something about yourself personified as a dream character. So there are these kind of unusual dreams where this happens. And the day after I created the video, finalized it, got it all rendered out, uploaded it, I ran across your post at Reddit where you were describing this amazing experience that you had that was over a period of time. We're not talking something one-off. We're talking about something that lasted for a while, and that you had several instances of these dreams and other sorts of premonitions that came to you about what was going on in the life of this friend that you'd had who you hadn't talked to in a few years. So what do you say we pick up there?
Sure.
Okay, good. I want to give some background for the students. This is based off of everything that you posted at Glitch in the Matrix, the subreddit for the strange and unusual occurrences that can happen in people's lives. And you get a lot of experiences of like dreams that preview the future and give you information about things going on in people's lives, and you haven't talked to them in years. I've seen even more, not more interesting, but like on the other end of the spectrum, I've seen some of these accounts of experiences like dreaming about places you've never been or even heard of. It's on the other side of the world in some, Himalayan mountain or something. And you're like, why did I dream about that place? And then you look it up on like Google Maps and you're like, that was exactly the place I saw in my dreams. How weird is that?
Did you see that I edited in, I apologize for interrupting, but did you see that I edited in at the end of that post a story exactly like that? That I wasn't thinking about when I made the post originally, because I was talking about the friend more so, and then I edited to add that in.
The dream that you had was with his wife in this place, and she was talking
in the park,
to you. Yeah. So is that park is that park a real place?
It's a real place. That's Columbia Park in Kennewick, Washington, and I live on the other end of the country.
And you had never been there?
I've never been anywhere near there. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of Kennewick. I've never heard of any of that, no.
So you found this out after the fact, that the place that was the setting for the dream, a place you had never been to and didn't even know exist, was a real place. How were you able to verify that? Did you go to the park or look up pictures or?
Yeah, so in the dream, it was one of these dreams where I was having this other type of experience that we're talking about. And this dream was sort of unusual because the woman my friend's wife was talking to me the entire time. She just didn't stop talking. And I wasn't listening to her because I was very focused on where are we? And so I was really looking at my surroundings, and there were a couple of them that were unusual. I mean, you could argue that a park looks like a park, that a river looks like a river, but there were a couple that kind of stood out. One was just a strange looking bridge, and one was, it turned out to be a playground with a bunch of little wooden structures, but it was very unique looking. And so when at the end of the dream, I had asked her, where are we? And she laughed like she thought I knew, and she was surprised I didn't. She said, Kennewick. And I never even heard that word before, but I could see the word in my mind when she said it. And when I woke up, that word was still really there in my brain, and so I just wrote it down. And I went and Googled the word, just Kennewick, because I didn't know what that was. And so I saw it was a city in Washington, and so I opened up like a Google map and kind of zoomed in and saw that a river ran through it, and there had been a huge river in the dream, and here it turned out to be at this running through Kennewick, Washington, is the Columbia River. And I saw that there was a park on that river in that city. So I Googled, and it was Columbia Park, and so I Google image searched Columbia Park, Kennewick, Washington. And yeah, it was all these pictures of things I had just looked at, and one of them was this bridge. It's called the Blue Bridge. One was that playground. All these little wooden structures, kind of looks like a castle. But
I just pulled it up.
These,
yes. Okay. Go ahead. I'm pulling it up as we're talking about it, and the first thing I see is the little castle. Okay, awesome. And I see the bridge. Yes. I see the river. Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there's like a walking path on that river, and we had been walking on that path. And so I saw all of these at the little picnic table area where the trees were more sparse. Obviously, it's a more open area. I had just seen all of that. And so that's why I say, like, you can argue that a picnic table area in a park is a picnic table area in a park. But that bridge and that playground, I was like, I just saw those. So, yeah, that was really weird. That was the weirdest thing for me, personally.
So the bridge was the like the steel girder type bridge, yes. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I just
and in my
saw
part of the country, that I don't know if there are bridges like that over in that area of the country. Maybe that's a normal looking bridge, but for where I live, that is absolutely not normal looking. Like, we don't have that around here.
Gotcha. So. Okay. Wow. So that's amazing that you get all of this detail in the dream. It lines up with reality. It's a place you'd never been to before. And that the character, I should say that the wife is sure. there with you and appears to know that you're dreaming. And so this is pretty amazing. I think what I need to do now is give some backstory on this so that I can catch up our listeners. We kind of jumped right into the deep end. No, that's good. That's great. That's great. So what happened is you had a friendship with someone who lived overseas, starting when you were age 13. This continued for a couple of years. You met each other a few times in person, but because he'd lived in another country, you didn't really have many chances to interact in person. But it sounds like you had a close relationship with him, or at least, you were good friends for at least a couple of years. Then a few years go by and you start, or how long? Okay. How long ago was it?
Well, so we stopped talking like 10 years ago, and then it was like 4 years before this started.
Okay. And so
4 years of not talking.
A total time of 2 or 3 years that you were close friends.
No, close friends. We were friends for 13 years.
Wow. Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So
he's now overseas. I just want to be clear about that. I know in my post I had just said we're in different countries. He's in Canada and I'm in the U.S. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So geographically, it's potentially a few hundred miles, a few thousand miles?
It's thousands now. So at the time that we met, I lived in Florida and he lived in Toronto.
Okay.
And he was in in Florida vacationing when we met. And then I live still on the eastern half of the country, and he now is more over by like Vancouver. He's in British Columbia now.
Okay. And one of the points that I make in this, it's that geographic distance doesn't matter with this. There is a way that information is communicated through these kind of mysterious means, I hate to say the word quantum, but they're finding out that there's this
Yeah.
way that everything connects together in the universe and can exchange information. This goes back to the theory of non-locality that was started by Einstein, and then it got into like quantum field theory and quantum mechanics and stuff. And basically what they found out is that everything in the universe can potentially communicate with everything else. But with, especially with humans, we greatly filter down what we're taking into ourselves, because otherwise it's just like a capacitor that gets overloaded, it blows. So we have these little points of awareness, and we can filter what information comes into us. And then there's another kind of filtering that goes on, which is how much of that becomes conscious, how much of it you become aware of. The subconscious parts of your mind can figure out, it can take in a lot more of this information than what you can consciously process. So sometimes it's there in the back of your mind, but it's not, So anyway, this is what I dug into, as your experience is one of many that I've run across, and that I was trying to find some kind of scientific explanation for this, for how this information is exchanged, where you can know what is going on with someone whom you have no physical contact with, you have no other means of knowing what's going on, and then all of a sudden, boom, you know that he's getting married. And you said it was like 2
Yep.
weeks where these dreams and stuff were coming on you, and you're like, wow, how do I know that he's getting married? And then you knew
Yeah.
that his wife was pregnant, and then you knew that he was going to have a baby girl. So
Yeah.
are there any other of these dreams that you have had that we haven't touched on yet?
Yes. Um, so a couple of those were not dreams, but so like when I knew he was getting married, that wasn't through a dream, but there was a dream in the middle of it that was sort of related.
Okay.
That talked more about how he was feeling about her and about the wedding and stuff. Um, and then the pregnancy and then there was another dream for the baby being a girl. And then there was, this wasn't a dream. It was when I was awake. It was a random thought that her name was going to be what her name is. And that was accurate. And then the day that she was born, that was more like an awareness. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't when I was awake. I had a lot of dreams following that though. Yeah, I had a dream that they took a trip to Disney. And I was able to verify that. That did happen. That happened a month after I dreamed it. So that was weird. I had a dream that the house was having some kind of remodeling done in the kitchen. I could not confirm that one.
Okay.
I don't know that. So the ones that I could confirm were the wedding, the baby, the pregnancy, the gender, the name, the birth.
And you
And the
found all
Disney
this out
trip.
through Facebook posts and stuff, where you were able to get just a little bit of public information off of his Facebook profile, because you haven't been talking with him directly in a decade. So you're just doing the old cyber sleuthing thing, and you see a few pictures here and there, and you see that he got married, and you explained that there was nothing leading up to this, that just all of a sudden there was a picture on his Facebook, but it was 2 weeks after you started having the dreams, and then you see the status, you're like, oh, he's going to get married, and you have these dreams about it, and then 2 weeks later, voila, suddenly something posts on Facebook where he's showing like wedding pictures, and you said the same.
Wedding pictures. Yeah, there was no status or anything. Yeah, it was just it had just come out of nowhere.
So you didn't even know he was in a relationship.
For all I knew, the last time I had talked to him, which was 4 years prior, he was single. So he didn't even know this woman, I don't think. I mean, I if he did, I didn't know about her, but he was single when last I knew. And so no, I didn't know if he had a girlfriend, if he didn't, if he was for all I knew, he could have already been married for a couple of years. I had no idea
How close were you
what
two?
his situation. How close were we?
Yeah.
Like when we were friends?
Yeah.
Really close. I mean, we traveled pretty far. Like I said, we pretty much have always lived a couple thousand miles apart, and we've traveled to visit and talked constantly, and just we were always there for each other through a lot of life, all the things that were going on, like the hard things. We were often who the other person will call. And we were very close.
Okay. Anything romantic? Did you love him? There's a reason why
Um,
I asked this, so I'll get to it in just a second, but it gets into a theory
that's
behind why we
okay.
get this information off of people, because there is some kind of a heart connection, basically. But you go ahead and
There,
tell me.
yeah. Well, yeah, it was complicated. There were periods of time where I did feel very strongly, and he did as well, and we talked about it, or um, about being together and about having feelings, and then it just never happened. And then it seemed like when we had the opportunity, and we had many opportunities, there were times when I couldn't go there, or there were times when he couldn't go there. But yeah, and there was always some of that underlying um, stuff where, and sometimes it was a really big part of it. Sometimes we were really talking about it. We were actively planning what we were going to do. One of us has to move, things like that. Yeah, it was on and off, but it was there.
Okay. Okay. And that might be something that helps to explain why you got this information. I think that anyone connected with him could have gotten it. But there's a reason why your radar is attuned to that signal. It's a signal that's being
Hmm.
shared across the universe, or I don't know how far it goes, but I know that all these points theoretically are connected and they can exchange information. It's sort of the same way that in a hologram, that a part of a hologram contains the information for the whole. You can see the entire picture of the hologram in even its smallest segments or parts. So this
Sure.
information is there, and it just depends on whether or not you are tuned into it. And the psychologist Anne Faraday, in some books in the 1970s, talked about her experiences of this when she would dream about things, factual information about what was going on with her husband and things that she couldn't know otherwise. And she also had other experiences, more like, visions and premonitions and stuff like that. And she said that it was because there was this times that she didn't know what was happening with him, and that she felt like there could be some kind of a threat going on to the relationship, or something that she needed to know, and that she
Yes.
would go into his dreams and basically plumb his subconscious mind to get the
Oh
information
my
from him
God.
that she wanted. Now, this is coming from someone who was she was a PhD clinical psychologist. So she tried to
Right.
explain it the best that she could. We didn't have the science back then, or we had it, but nobody had put together all the pieces to understand how these theories could work its way into how people have these strange experiences in their life of dreaming about things, that getting information in dreams that they couldn't know otherwise, and having premonitions of things and dreaming about things that happen in the future, which in the study of it, it's called precognition, and it would be called a
Hmm.
precognitive dream. This is something that there's a lot of research for that supports this. And there's a lady named Julia Mossbridge, who's a Northwestern University professor, who is, I think the book is already out, that's all about this subject, and her efforts to trace it through all of the academic literature, and then also incorporate people's experiences of this to be able to present something that says, here's an airtight case for why this phenomena actually exists. So let's get over that question and move on to understanding what it really is, rather than debating
Yeah.
whether it really happens, because
Right. It
you know
happens. Yeah.
and not just once or twice or three times, but it happened over and over again, and it came to you through dreams, through that feeling of just knowing. So there were some really powerful things that happened for you in this experience. So I have on the screen here, as we're talking, I have the Reddit post up, and this should be something that people can see as we're recording. I have screen recording software going, so we should
Oh,
be
cool.
good there, and they can read through it. It's a long post. I don't want to go through it word for word or anything. They can get all these other backstory details. And you've just
Sure.
answered what I consider to be the most important question, which is, how much of a connection did you two have? Now, I looked through your post and some of the comments, and one of the things that you said is that you actually went to psychics to try to figure out what was going on, and they started talking about twin flames and soulmates, and you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So
And maybe that's a thing, but it just doesn't resonate. It just didn't really tell me anything.
Now, there was somebody else who suggested to you that maybe you were getting this information for something that benefits you. And I wonder if knowing that he had moved on to, I mean, once you get married and have a kid, you are kind of committed to that path. And that it
Yeah.
did it close a door for you, that something that had been left open, which was the possibility of perhaps him being the one, that you said that you'd even talked about plans of maybe moving into the same town together, that there might be like
Right.
talking about a future that you have together. And this was a possibility that was open until he got married. Is that right?
No,
Okay.
no. So when our friendship ended, I had already, for the last year and a half ish, maybe 2 years, realized that it wasn't what I wanted at all. To have something with him, I loved him a great deal as a person, as a friend. But I knew that it would not work. And also my feelings had changed, just based on some things that had happened. So, and then when we ended the friendship, there was also a period of like sort of weeding through all your feelings and getting all that closure and so that you can move on, right? And so there was a lot of thinking about that stuff, about God, it was such a loss, and all these things that we had gone through emotionally, right? And even though, I guess this is hard to explain, even though that went away, I kind of felt that our friendship would be better for those feelings having gone away,
Okay.
right? At the time that we were friends and that happened, I thought that we would be better for that because it made things difficult at times. And when I realized I just feel like he's my friend and that's all I ever want him to be, it felt kind of like a relief. It was a relief. I went, okay, now I know exactly where my boundaries are and exactly where his are, and that is going to make life much easier. And even when we stopped being friends, I kind of went through my feelings and, you do some soul searching, and I realized that was still true. But, the first, I would say it probably took a year or two to move on from being sad, just sad that my friend was gone, or, having the instinct to call him up, just things like that, getting him out of my routine and stuff, and really being completely done with it. And then it was still 2 years after that this began. So to me, and by the way, I was in a really happy relationship that I'm still in now. We've been together for 15 years. So I was very, very happy in my relationship and had been for some time, 3 or 4 years, before this began. So no, to me, it wasn't like like you had mentioned, like that one woman, the psychologist who said, when she felt there was a threat, there was no threat, or there was no sense of, he might have been the one for me, and now that's gone. That's not possible. There
Okay.
was nothing like that. In
Okay.
fact, if you don't mind, I kind of want to say this. I kind of have some
Yes.
feelings about something else you said too. Um, I I kind of what I felt like, because I did a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting, a lot of really over analyzing, like going through everything with a microscope while this for these few years that I was having all these dreams about his life and stuff. Um, what I felt like I realized, at least as a possibility, was that I thought, had the thought that maybe I wasn't really in love with him, maybe, or had, like strong feelings for him or whatever, wanted a relationship, because every time that opportunity presented itself, every time he offered, every time he wanted to move, or he said, okay, we'll come move here, I didn't take him up on that. And I wondered if maybe we always had this kind of connection, and maybe I didn't have the understanding or the language for that. And so to me, that, just because it was so strong, it felt like love, or I want to be with you. And maybe that wasn't really what it was. Maybe it was this other connection. Does that make sense?
It does. And this brings up an interesting avenue to explore, which is that perhaps and I know this to be a function sometimes of dreams, is they create these scenarios to show you things. It's like virtual reality in a way. And what they do is
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to show you sometimes about roads that you didn't travel. And there is something to be learned from
Shun.
it, even though you didn't do it. And so people sometimes wonder what would have happened if I would have married my high school sweetheart. And there they are 15 years later or something. And whether or not it was that would have been a great decision or that would have been terrible or, in between, it's still just informing them of something that helps them to basically mature, to grow, to understand themselves better, to understand life better, their life to that point
Sure.
better. And then it helps them also to make better future decisions. And I remember at one point, the Reddit conversation here has gone very long compared to the last time I looked at it a few hours ago. So you've really been,
Yeah.
this really blew up, man. And so it's great. I mean, a lot of people are resonating with your experience here. But I remember seeing at one point you were talking about how it felt like the information was just sort of being beamed into you. What was that like, receiving this information, whether in a dream? Let's begin with the dream state. Is that fair to say that you felt like it was just like you're kind of tuned into like a radio antenna and you're just kind of tuned in and you're getting this information? Or did I not characterize that correctly?
I don't know. It's so hard to say. You know, it came in a lot of the dreams. There was more than one kind of dream, but there was a pattern, like a format that happened very, very frequently. So there were a few dreams that sort of went off that format and did something totally different. But more often than not, there were a set of things that were true in each dream. And when I would have those dreams, like the same with the one with his wife, when we figure out Columbia Park in Kennewick, Washington, she talked. I couldn't tell you one thing she said, and it's like I wasn't listening to her. I was looking around. But in real life, if you're walking around and somebody's talking, surely you pick up on some things they say. But that's not how those dreams worked. It was really common that I would have the dream mostly, almost always about him, and he would talk and talk and talk and talk the whole time. And when I would wake up, I wouldn't know one thing that he said. It was like the visuals of the dream, the movie of it, right? The walking around, the scenery, the conversation. It's like that's just, I don't know. It almost feels like that's just the scene that maybe your brain gives you, and it really doesn't have anything to do with like, hey, this information is coming now. Because you know what it felt like? I'm sorry, this is confusing. It's confusing for me.
No, please detail. This is great.
But at one thing that is true about these dreams is that it always felt like we were really meeting up. I've had dreams that did not contain information, not about this subject, but just through our lives we dream that are super vivid, or you wake up and you go, oh my God, that felt so real.
Yeah.
And this was even more than that. It was, I feel like I was just with my friend. So when I would journal about it, because I wrote on that post, I started journaling about this because it was happening so much, I needed to keep track of it. And I would write in there, I put dream in quotation marks, or I'd call it a dream meetup thing, because it didn't feel sufficient to call it a dream. It felt like, what's sort of different than that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It's kind of the ultimate hangout. You're not just, you feel like you're actually in the presence of the person and you can feel their energy. You can feel the person there. It's not just a dream character. This was something that I had discussed in the lesson. So without prompting, you just confirmed one of the things I teach my students. Okay. So this is great, is that it's like a real experience. And it's basically known as mutual dreaming or shared dreams. And outside of Western culture, this is very widely accepted to be real. It's just in our Western materialist paradigm, we have rejected this, and we did it perhaps even centuries ago, where we rejected all of this kind of phenomena. And the whole idea of dream sharing, while I think there are many individuals in Western culture who know that it's real, who've experienced it, I've experienced it, I know many, many people who have, that it's not accepted as being part of our consensus reality. There are many scientist type people, rational, overly rational thinkers who would come in and say, this is impossible, therefore it can't happen. So there must be another explanation for it. And they usually go back to it's coincidence, it's imagination, it's fantasy, it's lying, because you're relying on the reports of people to when they say they have these experiences, you are relying upon the factual reporting of that, and there are people who seek attention and who kind of muddy the water, but I look for, as a researcher, I look for people who can tell me some of these things I know to be common among this experience of, say, like shared dreaming. And then you start ding, 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 telling me about your experience. And I'm going, yep, I know a lot of other people who've experienced the same thing in the same way. And it tells me that, you're telling the truth. So thank you for that.
Right.
Okay, so this is really interesting. The shared dream aspect of it. When you saw his wife in the park, had you seen any pictures of her or anything like that? Did you have anything visually? Okay, so that imagery could be rendered from memory, except you felt like there was the presence of her, and she, as a character in your visionary dream state, basically, she's able to respond on the fly, which I teach my students about dream characters, that one of the ways that you can test them is to see how well they react to the unexpected. You ask a question and then they go, it does not compute. Like you'll have characters that do that in more ordinary dreams, and they're these basically things that bubble up from the subconscious mind. They take form as a dream character, and they have very limited access to anything else in the psyche or that entire structure system that can activate while you're dreaming. And it's all these parts of yourself that are interacting, and you can have this dream character sometimes, other times, where they are very intelligent. They're able to act on the fly, but they're still parts of you. They're like archetypes, aspects of your mind. They can be like organs of your body, that are like part of your bodily systems and stuff. They're all communicating. But you felt like this was really her. And when you kind of challenged her on like, hey, where are we? And she's like, we're in a dream, like,
she's like, what?
Definitely. Somehow she knows that it's a dream. And this happens, you get this a lot when you read about like lucid dreaming. I don't know if you've been to the lucid dreaming subreddit, but I've spent a lot of time there, and there'll be these people who are like, they challenge their dream characters. They'll be like, hey, do you know we're dreaming? And you can get reactions from, of course we're dreaming, all the way up to like they turn into a 40-foot tall monster and eat them, like, or they go running in terror, or, they pull out a gun and shoot themselves in the head, or they object. They're like, no, this isn't a dream, And what I teach is that this dream world is reality for them. And this is actually backed up through depth psychology, which studies these great inner depths of the psyche. And they say that there are these parts of the mind that their reality and your dream world is their reality, and that their reality continues even when you're awake, because the part of the mind that's generating the dream is the unconscious mind, and it doesn't go away when you wake up. It goes into the background, whereas while you're dreaming, the unconscious mind comes into the foreground, and the conscious mind, especially the rational mind, kind of takes a little bit of a back seat. It's along for the ride, but it's allowing itself to participate in these virtual reality experiences that we call dreams. So
wow.
Yeah, I hope I'm not going on too long. I'm trying to use this as an opportunity to teach my students things too. So I hope
that's perfect. That's fine.
Awesome. Okay. I think I had one other good other question that we really haven't. Oh, yes. Have you had other experiences of this outside of your experience with him? I mean, have you had precognitive dreams? Have you had these sort of like moments of just knowing things like it, or premonitions? Yeah. Okay. And can you describe any of that?
Yeah. There was a dream. It happened with a friend, and it actually made its way into my dream journal, because the journal is keeping about all the dreams with this one friend.
And students, please notice she keeps a dream journal. Go ahead. This is something I tell them. You must keep a dream journal, and you keep a dream journal.
Oh, so for sure.
Thank you for saying that.
I kick myself now several years later because I didn't start journaling about this incident sooner.
Okay.
Because now I can't remember little details.
Yes.
But so during this 3-year period where this was happening with the one friend, I did have another dream about a different friend, but also a very, very close friend of mine who I'd known for a very long time. And we had just not talked in several months because I was moving around the country and he was doing a lot of things too, and we just had not been in touch recently. And I had a dream about him. It wasn't like with this friend where I felt like I met up with him. It wasn't like that. It was like, but I felt like I got information from it. And the dream was bizarre. It was very symbolic. But I dreamt that we were in a house together, and he was, we were upset because we could see out the window. There was the ocean, and far away was a ship, and his sister, we knew that his sister was on it, and the ship was sinking. We knew that it was going to sink, and then it began to sink. And my friend, because it's his sister and he's upset, he's running around the house sort of frantically, and he's preparing to die himself, as though it's happening to him. And it's hard to remember. I have it written down. I can send it to you if you like. But it prompted me to reach out to him, and I said, hey, I had this really weird dream. I said, I had a dream that your sister was in trouble. Nobody could help her, and so we just kind of stood at the window and watched her ship go down. But then, God, I wish I could remember better. I'll have to send it to you. Whatever it was, but I sent it all out. I kind of just explained it to him, how I interpreted it, not exactly what it looked like. And he just said, metaphorically speaking, as it pertains to her, yeah, that's pretty much what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, with her life. So it was sort of, and it was, but it was, there was a certain feeling associated with it that made me go, hey, is there something to that? I need to reach out and tell him that, where I'd had plenty of dreams about him, always bizarre, that never made me feel like I needed to tell him, but I did feel some need to talk to him about it. And then he's like, yeah, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
So
Let me
that was
point out
weird.
for my students here that this dream is symbolic and metaphorical, yet it does express, it's a way of rendering the information as it's coming to you. You somehow pick up on what's going on with his sister. This is someone that you feel for. You have this heart, whether friendship or romance or whatever, all that matters is that it's a heart connection. You find this a lot between relatives, even like aunts, uncles, grandparents. If you have this connection with a person, then you can receive information about them. And then they are like a stop on other people in their lives. So now it branches out even further, and so now you're getting to his sister, and the information as you're dreaming is rendered to you in this symbolic form. So it says that the dreaming mind, this is probably a REM stage dream. I have a theory that a lot of these shared dreams happen outside of REM stage during the deepest, most unconscious stages of sleep, and it's why most people don't remember them. This is kind of emerging as a theory, but I've seen some evidence for it. But in your case, what you're actually seeing is this amazing way of creating a metaphor for somebody's life sinking. I mean, what better way than you see him, he's looking off in the distance, there's the ship, his sister's on the ship, and the ship is sinking. Then he tells you that her life is kind of going under in a way. So, wow.
Yeah.
Was it was it a health problem, or was it like she was making decisions to like throwing her life away?
Yeah, she was making terrible decisions and really going downhill. She just got mixed up with the wrong people and drugs, and she actually was killed not long after that, a couple of years later.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And I've seen this as planes crashing in dreams that can talk about a life that goes up in flames. I've seen it as like fires in buildings. I've seen it rendered as seeing a person like as a like gravestone type of thing with their name on it, or knowing that they're in a cemetery. I've seen it as sometimes even as seeing the actual crime that happens to the person, and that it's very factual and realistic. It's like you
literal.
get a view.
Yeah.
I forget her name, but they call her, she lives in, I think, Minnesota, but she's known for this. She helps to solve crimes because she sees them in her dreams, and they're very factual. I even talked to her via email a while back, and I had, after seeing her on one of these like Mysterious Universe or something like that, like one of these shows that are on A&E or whatever, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And they showed this trail of like documented cases, and they interviewed the detectives who worked with her, and they're like, yeah, we get a lot of people claiming they know how to do this stuff, but she's the real deal, you know? And she was actually seeing the
Yeah.
crimes from first person perspective and experiencing
Oh my God.
the murder, the burial of the body, seeing the murderer, and things like this. And she would see all of this, and sometimes she could get information that she was able to then give to the detectives. And there were times that they actually solved crimes. So
Oh, wow.
I'm glad you didn't see it that far. That she says that it's a very
Yeah.
hard thing to process. That most people can't do it, but she has this ability to fully immerse yet also detach from what's happening to her. Like she knows it's not happening to her, and that she's playing a role of being the witness so that she can help with the crime. And sometimes with the soul of the person who's experienced some of these violent crimes, they have these sort of things that are unresolved, and it makes them hang on afterwards. And that
Yeah.
she can kind of play this role also of being someone who can say, it's okay to let go. I'll take care of things from here. I'll pass on your information so that you can go on. And so, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, very interesting. Wow. So you've had other experiences of this. It doesn't sound like it happens all the time, but what is your criteria for knowing that this is more than just a dream? You said something earlier about you know what dreams can feel like when they're really real, and you said that there's something
Yeah.
else that's more real to this, that it's like even more factual. Is there any subtle way that you feel this way through it, or you can tell my students how you have developed the
Um,
ability to discern the ordinary, the extraordinary, and then whoa, blow your mind sort of dream?
I think like with the friend, with the sister, right? Just the one incident. That was just a tiny little listening to yourself because there's just that tiny little feeling goes, huh, was there something to that? Um, and that's it, nothing else. But with the friend, I told you that there was sort of a format to most of the dreams. And so I started to when that happened, without question, I wrote it down. I knew that it meant something. I knew that that was a real experience and not just me having a crazy dream, or not just, hey, I've been having these intense dream experiences about this person for, let's say, a year and a half now. So now every dream I have about him means something. I mean, when they followed this format, I knew that that's what it was, and I wrote it down. Um, and one thing that happened there, by the way,
Yeah.
was that I would feel abruptly told that, and that happened with the dream in the park with the wife too. I felt like someone had yanked me into that space. I was really aware of that sensation every time it happened. Sometimes I would be having an actual dream, just a regular old dream, and then I would feel yanked out of it, and all of a sudden, I'm here. Here's my friend, or here's his wife, or
Okay.
whatever it was, and now we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're probably in a REM stage at that time, because you can't, when you come out of REM stage, has been measured in sleep labs, you go into a stage of light sleep. A lot of people will wake up or come close to it, and then they go back through the cycles again where they go into like, lighter sleep, deeper sleep, deeper sleep. And then it kind of pendulums back up where your brain wakes up, but your body stays asleep. You go into REM stage sleep. And that's when you have these very vivid story-like dreams. And so you are probably in a REM stage, and you are being pulled out of it into this other dream experience that's very
Yeah.
similar to the REM stage vivid dreams, but you say that there's even more to it, that it's what word would you use? I'm like extra vivid. I can't think of the word for it. Can you think of one to describe it?
Aware. I mean, I would not say lucid dreaming, but I was always aware of that sensation of that, whoa, how did I just get here? Whoa, what just happened? Whoa, what was that? But now I'm here, and this is happening. And it ended the same way, too. It always ended very abruptly. It felt like I was yanked away at the end every time.
Okay,
So
interesting.
it was to me, that was kind of an awareness that you don't have in a dream. You just kind of accept what is in your dream, or you respond to it as a part of the story. And this was an instance where I was going, what was that? Whoa, how did I get here? Whoa, what was that feeling? Every time I felt that, I knew, I had that almost every time.
Now I have something, a
So,
marker. I have something to ask. Is I'll ask other people. I know somebody who has these experiences pretty regularly. And I will ask him if it feels like he's being yanked into another scene, or if it used to feel that way. Perhaps there's a process that goes on. At first you maybe have to be tugged into it, because if you actually had a choice, you'd say no. And then,
right.
and then you become more accepting of these things, because it can be real paradigm busting for some people. There's this
Yeah.
strange, like, well, the rational materialist world says this stuff isn't possible. And then there's the, almost like woo woo sort of aspect that you can share this publicly and get strange reactions from people. But what I'm finding
Yeah.
is you have incredible validation here from the people at Reddit, that they are sharing some of their experiences that are similar to
Yes.
theirs. They're supporting you in your experience to say, hey, maybe this hasn't happened to me, but I believe it happened to you. And it's really interesting to know that
Right.
these things can happen. And what I find is that we're being gradually introduced to this, that even if we don't hear about it on the evening news, or on 60 Minutes, hey, we can share dreams,
Yeah.
that there are other people, the awareness of this is spreading out. There are experiments that started with this in the 1970s that I know of, that started at Monroe Institute. And then there was also Gene Campbell, who wrote the book Mutual Dreaming. And they have done experiments with this in laboratory settings. They set it up as laboratory experiments and passed all of the protocols of science, to actually create these experiences and measure them as they happen, and do everything they could as scientists to make sure that there wasn't any cross contamination, and that you could explain this away because of some kind of flaw in their data. So
Wow.
and they have
Yeah.
been published in peer-reviewed journals. The work at Monroe Institute is not, but they've created lucid dream states that were intentionally shared. So they had two very
Wow.
powerful lucid dreamers in separate rooms, soundproof, separated rooms. And they had one guy in a third room who was bringing in the audio from them. And what they learned how to do was how to lucid dream and still receive instructions while they're in a lucid dream state. So they would have headphones on, and they would
Mm.
have Bob Monroe's voice talking to them in either room and guiding them as they go through it, not coaching them, but just kind of, okay, you're set for, now see if you can find your friend. And they would both go into a lucid dream state and try to find each other. And Tom Campbell, the physicist, said that they got so good at it that they could induce it within 10 or 15 minutes. They could sit down, get into a lucid dream state,
Wow.
and that they could go and find each other. And he's a physicist, and the guy he was finding was an engineer. And they both came at it with this perspective of, let's understand this as an experience. Let's not question whether it's possible. Let's do it, and then let's understand it. Let's reproduce it. But it's hard to
Yeah.
reproduce these things in other settings. You get
Very.
into, like the Amazing Randy or whatever, and he's sitting there glaring over top of you as you're trying to get into a relaxed lucid dreaming state, and you can just
Yeah.
feel the oozing bad energy off of this guy. The
Yes.
the debunkers, they've actually found there is a debunking effect, that they can't reproduce phenomena that they've been able to reproduce other times when they bring a debunker into the room. So they're actually creating a field.
Wow.
They're creating a field around them that doesn't allow them to have the experience. So isn't,
Unreal.
talk about confirmation
Yeah.
bias, oh,
No
wow.
kidding.
Uh,
I had a spiritual dream, if you are interested in that, about a death of a loved one. That was very different for me too. I've only had
okay.
that once, and it
Yeah,
was.
absolutely.
Um, I grew up with just a friend across the street, and she lived with her grandparents, and they were just wonderful people, and we were constantly together, and I spent a lot of time at their house. And the grandpa was just a nice, sweet grampy, just the kind of grandpa everybody wants.
Yeah.
And I was there all the time, so I knew him from the time I was 3. And as I moved around and, not been in the area, when I would go home for holidays, I would still make sure to go to their house and stop by. So I saw them not less than 3 times a year, 4 times a year, my whole life, And the grandfather got emphysema when we were quite young. We were little kids when he was diagnosed, probably 10 years old. And every year after that, for the next several years, it was well, this might be Grandpa's last Christmas. It might be Grandpa's last Thanksgiving. And you finally hear that for 3 or 4 years and go, okay, no, it's not. He's fine. And he was fine. He lived a very long time after he was diagnosed. But anyway, it was a couple weeks before Thanksgiving, and I had no bad reports about Grandpa at all. And I had a dream that I was standing in the front yard where I grew up across from his house, and he was standing in front of me, but he wasn't in a body. He was, oh gosh, it sounds so funny to say, but he was like gold and silver dust almost, and he was an upside down triangle in shape, sort of. And I could see through him. Yeah, it was a trip, but I knew it was him. And he was communicating to me. I could hear the words, but clearly he didn't have a mouth or a voice, so whatever that means.
Yeah. But, it's telepathic, and that's a hallmark of visitation dreams is that they're telepathically communicated. The mouths don't have to move. Okay. You can just feel the person. So that lines up with And I give this advice actually to tell if it's a visitation dream is if the communication is telepathic, that's a hallmark of it. So yeah, awesome.
Oh wow,
cool. It's actually fairly common.
Okay, yeah. It's common, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, believe it. I mean, among reports of it, I think that this is an experience that few people are ready to have because they don't have the emotional balance for it, especially when it's somebody who's close to them. Either that or they are too wrapped up in beliefs about afterlife and soul and God and that kind of stuff. And it interrupts them from being able to just have the experience and then figure it out afterwards what it really is and what it all means and what the implications are. Okay, so
it was amazing. He spoke. Everything he said was like an echo. I love you. I love you. I love you. It was very repetitive, but it was I love you. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. Thank you for being a part of my family. It was all just these really just nice things. It really wasn't the things he said. It was the feeling. That one was the big feeling. That was very overwhelming, and I knew what it meant. I knew he had passed. And he just went down the street and kind of vanished. But when I woke up, I went, oh God, he died. I have to call Heather, my friend. And I said, nope, Thanksgiving is 2 weeks. I'll be over there in 2 weeks and I'll see him. I kind of didn't want to believe it. And then on Thanksgiving, I was about to go over there and I said, okay, I have to call first because I don't want to just walk into this. And I did. I called and he had passed 2 weeks prior.
Right when you had the dream.
That one was so, yes. And that was so I didn't get a date, but he just said it was, he died 2 weeks ago. And it was like 2 weeks ago that I've had the dream. So I'm sure it was right around the same time. But that was extreme. I couldn't talk about that for years without crying, not because it was sad. I actually never felt sad about his passing because I was so certain that was not just a dream, that he really communicated to me and he really went somewhere, that it would never bother me a bit to lose him, which is not in my character normally, it's not typical for me, but I knew he was fine. I knew he went somewhere. He's not gone. And it was just so overwhelming and kind of beautiful. I cried about it for years anytime I talk about it because it was such a nice experience. So that's something that's always that I knew. So it helped me to know about that one.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is really, oh man, that touches me. And right now I'm going to my page where I have a post called Dead Parents and Relatives, Is It Real? And it's how to interpret these dreams. It's at dreams123.net. It was the #1 post for years there. I have this little top 10 thing and my website calculates how many hits I'm getting a day. And this post on dead parents and relatives, like how to determine, is this real? Can it even happen? And a lot of my understanding of this began with Edgar Cayce. I had a synchronous experience of finding 2 Edgar Cayce books in a new home that I moved into. And I went, this guy's and I knew who he was, but I hadn't read these books. And I read them and they were about dreams. And he talked about visitations and dreams from deceased loved ones. And I was like, Cayce has been such a good source of information about these other things that I really want to dig into this and assume that it's true what he's saying. And then I'll I'll test it through my own experience and decide whether or not I can accept it as something that I know to be factual or something that I can't know is factual. And it'll just stay in that gray
Yeah.
zone, and that's okay. It'll be sort of like what someone's opinion is. But here's one of the things, and I'm
Yeah.
scrolling through trying to find, here we go. The ways that you can distinguish these dreams. I have this list. It says the messages are always positive, though sometimes pointed. There are no guilt trips or anything like that. The messages, this is from the deceased loved ones, frequently convey information about the health and welfare of the dreamer or family members. The dreams are often more straightforward than symbolic. The message is communicated clearly and lovingly. The strength of the contact seems to, depend on the telepathic abilities of the dreamer and the deceased and the emotional state of the dreamer. A message nearly universal to dreams of spiritual contact is the deceased convey that they are all right, even happy in the next life, not in distress. It's the living they're concerned about. So I have like four others on that list, and I don't need to go over them now, but I just wanted to let you know
So
that
textbook, basically.
yeah, your experience is textbook in that sense that, I mean, it's amazing. And I never want to, take the, I never want to make it sound it's any less amazing than it is. I think, though, that there are ways of understanding it, of seeing what's in common between these experiences and using it as some kind of a checklist to be able to tell whether or not your experience of this kind of stuff is true. So yeah, dreams123.net, and look at the right sidebar, and it's number 2. It's just like these little, let's see, what is it called on the sidebar? Most popular posts. And yeah, that's been number 1 or number 2 for years now. And yeah, it gets like 300 views a day. And over time, it's because there are a lot of people who have these experiences, and then what do? Like everyone else, they go out onto the internet, and they go looking for, they go looking for information. So no, this is really awesome. I'll look forward to maybe getting your, the other information you had to share that we mentioned during the interview. And, yeah, and I want to thank you so much for sharing this with me, and this is going to get, as long as the recording, oh my God, knock on wood, this should have,
I know.
Because this has been a great conversation and very spontaneous, and you gave all this info that was spontaneous, and I didn't even know to ask for it. So I'm going to hope that this was recorded right, and then I'm going to put it on my YouTube. Dreams123 is the channel. And then I'm going to put it out also for my students at dreamschool.net, and they will really get a kick out of this. And over time, this information is going to be part of this spreading out. The ripple is getting wider and wider as people find out that these things are possible, that they can have them too. And of course, people keep a dream journal. This is the beginning of it. You have to give the dreams your attention first, and then you have to have enough data collected to be able to discern what are the more ordinary dreams from these ones that are extraordinary. Although it sounds like there's such a powerful feeling that comes with these dreams that that they're extraordinary, even if it's the only dream you remember for that year, because it's such an extraordinary dream. Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Rochelle, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Rochelle. I appreciate it so much. And you take care. And oh, by the way, the question about whether or not you should let him know about this experience is, I think
Stop it. Did you just read my mind? Because I was like, I want to ask. I'm not going to ask.
What does your heart say?
Please.
What does your heart say?
Huh?
What does your heart say?
My heart says, you're going to feel like a dumbass, but do it. You have to say it. You have to say it. I don't know. I don't even know exactly what I want to get out of it. You've read all the comments. I don't know. I'm a mess about it.
The fact
and I don't know why, because I don't even need a response. I just want to tell him, but I don't know.
Okay. I think
it says do it.
I think that's the best thing to go by. I mean, there's head, there's heart. They both can say different things. Then the gut instincts, they can say something else. But that's what I do when I have a big decision to make. I get everybody to weigh in. I say, head, what do you have to say? Okay. Heart, what are you saying? Okay. Well, gut, what are you saying? Okay. Maybe go a little lower. What are you saying? And so I get everybody's input, and then I as the rational, as the person who has to live this life, I then make that decision. And I don't see how it could hurt anything. And there was one thing that you said, he liked a comment that you made on Facebook 5 years later, and you think that maybe it's possible that he forgot about it, or that he suddenly just ran across it That's happened to me on Facebook where I'm like, oh, somebody liked this picture that I posted 5 years ago. And I didn't see it until I was going through there for some odd reason, and I go,
Yeah.
oh, wow, that person did respond, or they responded 5 years later. So that I
Yeah.
have found sometimes is not coincidence, that it's in a way, if it was
Right.
me and that happened with me, I would look at that and read it as, this is a sign that adds up on the favor of go ahead and share this with him. You guys didn't
I
end
thought about that
badly,
too.
He's with a different woman. You aren't looking to move in on that territory,
Not at
so
all.
yeah. I mean,
No.
you've been married or in a relationship for 15 years and your life is very settled. So that's not what any of this is about.
No.
And there is a reason why you're dreaming about him in this way, or did dream about him in this way.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you've got your head together about this and you haven't let the experience overwhelm you. So if that's
Right.
because that's what happens to a lot of people. So I would look at it and go, huh, all right. And if that's what your heart says, then do what your heart says.
I think I'm going to do it. Thank you for saying that. I never know. It's what I was thinking about before you called me. I was sitting here looking over my letter like, I got to change this all over again. I do. I get very afraid about coming off like a wacko, or like you said, like people on that subreddit, like but only one person said, I kind of questioned this, but not fully. And everybody else just accepted it. And that is shocking to me because I don't expect that response. And I know that I'm almost certain that will not be his response.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in things like that. And if he didn't experience anything at all, then he'll be like, oh, God, Rochelle is so crazy. Why is she bothering me right now? And I hate that feeling of I'm bothering you and I'm looking like a crazy person.
Well, yeah, I don't think anyone's comfortable with that except for crazy people. So,
Yeah.
But there's something there. And even if it's sometimes people I have seen minds be changed because they either have an experience like this, or they have somebody very close to them, or was close to them at one time, or somebody has an experience like you that involves him. So naturally, I mean, if a friend called me up and was like, man, I've been having these dreams about you, that would make me really curious, people would take it, they can take things like that the wrong way. But I think that there could be something saying he's ready for this. And that's what we're doing, is we're spreading this knowledge one person at a time. Your post at Reddit is a big ripple in the pond. You've reached a lot of people, and potentially there will be hundreds of thousands more people who will read that post over time because of how many likes and comments and stuff. And plus it's in a big forum. So, and next thing you know, it could get cross-posted. It could be picked up by media, not media, but like,
God, I hope not.
a podcast or something, or like a website like Mysterious Universe, or one of these others that compile these sorts of experiences information. But just at Reddit, it's the fourth largest social media platform in the country. It's one of the largest in the world. It's international in reach. So and I think that's what we're doing. We're just letting people know that this stuff happens, and we don't have to interpret it, we don't have to decode it, we just have to know that it happens. And then it's the question is, how do we learn to benefit from this? Which, of course, being able to see previews of the future, it starts you there with this guy, but now you are honing your abilities. You have things. It starts with these heart matters and close people, but then people like Edgar Casey had visions of things like where to drill for oil, and where to invest stocks, and he dreamed about the stock market crash in 1929 just before it happened, and he advised people to get
he kind of
out.
lucked
And
out.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that there can be very tangible, real material benefits from this. And I know you're a Taurus, so I saw that. I'm married to one, so I know what that's all about. And she's like, if you could figure out how to use some of these, crazy gifts and knowledge to be able to, win the lottery, that would be great, so. Wow, what an amazing experience. I hope Dream School students you're still with us, because that was a long conversation. I'm going to try to edit it down as best as I can. These things happen. There are ways of being able to tell when you have these sorts of dreams. You can, from Rochelle's experience through my experiences, many people who've had these experiences and reported them, there are ways of being able to tell. And like she said, it was like she was yanked into this other reality, and the vividness of it was even more vivid than vivid dreams. It had a different feel to it. Oftentimes people report a depth of detail to these sorts of dreams that you don't find as much in others, that they can feel like they can smell the air, they can hear the birds, they can feel the grass, they can, they can see the color of the sky. All of these details come to them the same as if they are in the location and they're looking around. Whereas in other types of dreams, you really need to focus on something before that sort of resolution comes in. The dream gives you as much of a skeletal outline as it can, just to keep you following along through the story. There's a sort of conservation of energy that goes on, in the sense that the dream doesn't do more than it absolutely has to do to keep you immersed in the story and to keep you immersed in that reality. So this is one of the ways that you can tell that you're having a dream of this sort, such as a shared dream experience or a precognitive dream experience. And then you can have others, like she said, where she had someone visit her, the grandpa that she was very close to, and that when he passed away, he came to say goodbye. This is a common experience. It's much more common than what we're led to believe. I do know, though, that I'll say it's a minority of the population that has these experiences. That the majority of people, after a loved one of their own or somebody who was close to them through someone else in their life passes on, that they're not going to have an experience like Rochelle's. But what did she do to prepare for this? Well, you can see a couple things. One is that she's a dream journaler. She keeps track of her dreams. There's somewhere she already knew, the interest of her in dreams. She already had that interest, and she already knew that there was something worth doing here, that writing down her dreams was worth the time and effort to put into it. And then she has this intuitive understanding that these dreams are trying to help her in some kind of way. At least it's not to harm her. So she goes with it, and she has the sort of emotional balance, grounding in reality, grounded in everyday life, that you need to be able to sort of sometimes let go and allow yourself to have these experiences. I think that is the most critical part of this. Will you allow yourself to have an experience like this? Because if you won't allow it to happen, it is very unlikely to happen. So I'm J.M. DeBoard, and this is Dream School, and I thank you for joining me for this lesson. I'll see you for the next one. And I want to say goodbye to you with our title screen in the background.